Hello, in this video we'll be looking at chapter 2 of the Yogavataranam, and I will walk you through starting at the beginning of the chapter on page 25 up to the end of the section headed Verbs, and that section ends near the top of page 29 just before the section headed Pronouns. For those who haven't yet learned or mastered the Devanagari script, I will be explaining and writing in Devanagari and in Roman script all of the words that that appear in Devanagari in the section that we'll be studying now. So I'll read it out to you and then intersperse my own comments as we go along. I read now from the text. In this chapter, we will begin to explore Sanskrit verbs in the present tense, as well as some simple pronouns and a few basic sandhi rules. The word sandhi, you'll see a lot as we go along. It is a very common feature of Sanskrit and also to a certain extent of Pali. It means putting together, a conjunction. It's actually cognate with the Greek word synthesis. So synte, the root te in Greek, T-H-E, like this in Greek, is cognate with the Sanskrit. Actually, the root is dha. That makes sandhi. This means putting. So sandhi, putting together. We'll deal with it in detail as we go along. So the verbal root is called a dhatu in Devanagari. Dhatu. Which is the same word used in Ayurveda for the 7 constituent elements of the body. Dhatu actually means something like an element, an irreducible minimum, rather like our word element, and almost down to atom. Actually, the word dhatu is from the same origin as this dha, which is the root of the ending in sandhi. It means a putting or a layering, a placing down. Exactly why it has come to mean an element, I don't yet know. I will let you know if I find out. So back to the text. Verbal roots are marked by the radical sign. Actually means like the square root sign. This is just a convention used among linguists to mark a root. Although the verbal root is actually a fictional construction invented by the grammarians, for the most part, all verbal forms and nouns are understood as deriving from these verbal roots. For example, now here, yoga. Let's go to the next page for you. The word you see here I apologize if this gets a bit clunky. I'm still just trying to master the new technology of screen mirroring and screen sharing and so on. So yoga, the act of yoking or joining. Yoga. Sorry, I've written that badly. Yoga. That is yoga. That is from the root yuj, which is cognate with Latin jungere, once we get junction, conjunction, or joining, and actually our word join comes from that same root. And of course yoke, as in yoking oxen together. So the root yuj, and we have the root kri. That's the one that's written. The root kri, meaning to do, cognate with create. And the two words given in this example are kriya and karma. Kriya and karma. Now, note here this r. You may have studied this separately already, but I noted in particular as we go along. The r immediately preceding another consonant, as here karma, is written as a hook on that consonant. So this is m. This is ma. This is ma. If you put a hook there, that becomes a rma. So although it's pronounced at the beginning of this syllable, it's actually written as a hook at the end of it. Note also that the short e, the sign for the short e, the vowel sign, appears before the letter. It's the only occasion in the Devanagari script that happens, where you have the vowel sign appearing before the letter. So here this is ka. By the way, you'll see a k written both like that or that. It makes no difference. It's a matter of style and typeface. It's the same. It says ka. Okay. Now, ka. Put that long stroke there. That makes a ka. This is a ka. This is a ka. This is ki. So that long stroke, but with this hook joining to the top. Ki. But ki, with a short e, the vowel sign comes before. So that is ki. Ki and ki, just the short e, a marked short sign there. Now I'll start reading from the section Verbs. A finite verb, one that has a subject either expressed or implied and is essential to any independent clause, is the main component of a Sanskrit sentence, whether it is included or assumed. Sometimes you can leave a verb out. If you say A is B, it's often sufficient just to say A, B. That's an equational sentence. This is the eternal law. Esho sanatano dharma. Is this the eternal law? You can leave out the is. So all finite verbs are differentiated according to person. That's the first, second, and third person. Note that's the first person. We are following here the Latin and Greek and classical general European nomenclature. So the first person means I, we, second person is you, and third person he, she, it, they. Note that the Sanskrit grammarians, the Indian grammarians generally, reverse the number of the persons. So what they call the first person is our third person. This is partially reflected in this grammar. You will note if you just flip over the page, the top of page 26, in the column on the left, under present tense verbs, third person he, she, it, they, second person you, third person I, we, but the actual order in which they're given is the Indian grammarian's order, so they put the third person first in this list. So both systems are used in parallel here, but the nomenclature, we follow the classical Latin and Greek nomenclature. There's the first, second, and third persons. Number, singular, dual, and plural. I think every modern European language has lost the dual. Latin never had it. Classical Greek had it. Sanskrit has it, a dual number, so if two of something, singular, the plural, but a special separate number if there's two of them. Pali has lost it. There are some slight traces of it left in Pali in a few fixed expressions, but basically it doesn't exist in Pali. It's only in Sanskrit that you have to learn it, as well as tense, mode, and voice. These distinctions will be explained as they arise. So we will begin by learning verbs in the present tense, active voice. Active, that's opposed to passive. Active, do, passive, be done. The active voice is called parasmaipada. That's the word in Devanagari near the bottom of page 25. Parasmaipada, a word for another. So para means another, and it follows the pronominal declension, which we'll get to in detail soon, where the dative is parasmai. Some of you may know the expression, reverence, or I bow to that blessed Guru. Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Tasmai, to that. So parasmai, to or for another. And the word pada means, among other things, a word, as in Dhammapada, the words of the Dhamma. So the parasmai pada, that's the grammatical term meaning word for another, means a transitive verb, an action that's directed outward and can act on an object and not the agent, that's the doer of the action. Now turning over to page 26, this is a table of the endings of the present tense indicative. That's indicative, that's a statement of fact, just a statement, as opposed to imperative, which is an order to do something, which has got a different set of endings, or the optative, which is like a conditional, one should do so, something could be so. There's a different set of endings. So the set of endings you see here on page 26 are by far the most commonly used. You'll need to learn them all by heart. So going across the first column, that's the third person singular dual and plural. Right, third person singular ending is T. This again is an example of the vowel sign for the E coming before the letter, because this is the letter ta on its own. It's a ta, that's just with the virama, just a T on its own. So this vowel sign coming in front of it. Right, that's T right underneath. And the dual sorry, the long ah, it's a short ah. The dual in ta and the plural in anti. Again, we have this short E occurring before, being written before the consonants there in pronunciation. It follows. Sorry, I keep writing long. Silly me. Anti. At the second person, that's the you, second singular, again, ends with a short E, so you write it like this C. And in the dual, that's the two, you two, if you're talking to two people, you have to use the second person dual. That is ta. And the plural, it's talking to three or more people. It ends in a ta, but without the visarga. So in the dual, ta, in the plural, ta. Now the first person ending, that's I, in a me. We, that's two of us, we two, there's a v. And the plural, we, that's we, if we're talking about three or more people, referring to we, that is ma. So don't try to learn these by heart yet. You'll pick them up very quickly as we go along and we see them in running texts. So I read again from the text. These endings are attached to a verbal stem in slightly different ways, depending upon which group the verb belongs to. There are 10 gana. That word there is gana. G, and then a n. This is the retroflex n. Gana. And it's the retroflex n that we write a dot on. N rather than n. A gana means a group. It also means a flock or a herd, as in the Hindu god Gana Isha, the herd lord, the lord of the herds. Gana Isha becomes by sandhi, by merging of the vowels Ganesha. And Ganapati, pati is another word for lord or master. Ganapati, the master or the lord of the herds. So these groups of verbs are divided into thematic and athematic. Thematic simply means that there's an a at the end of between the stem, between the root rather, and the ending. So that's the first, fourth, sixth, and 10th. Again, don't bother to learn this by heart. You will come to them one by one. It'll be quite easy when we examine each one. They're similar, all considered thematic, because they all share a gana, that's a sign, it's a group sign, that is or ends with the thematic vowel a. Additionally, for these four ganas, once their verbal stem is formed, it remains unchangeable throughout all conjugations. Now we look at the first class of the parasmaipada verbs. This first class is actually the most common of the classes. The first group is called bhavadi. That's from bhu ad. The word adi means beginning, and used as a suffix it means etc. So bhu adi means bhu etc. In fact, the word for etc. is iti adi, thus the beginning, iti adi. The first group is called bhavadi, meaning beginning with bhu. That's just the way the grammarians describe that class, like the bhu class, the bhu etc. class. Bhu adi by sandhi becomes bhuadi class. So that's the first verb of the group. I mean, in the way that Panini, the great grammarian, listed them. The verbal forms consist of a verbal stem, which is the verbal base, plus a specific gana sign, plus the endings. Now, don't worry if your head is swimming a bit here. It'll all become clear as we do it slowly, bit by bit, with a full explanation. So in the first group, the gana sign is added to the base before the second and third person endings, and is lengthened to a before the first person endings. So you see here, I'm just circling these. You'd always say the verb would be then end in army, ava, armor. That's in this these thematic verbs. Note that a gana sign is lost before endings beginning with a, for example, the third person plural form. So the anti actually has this a as part of the ending, so you don't repeat it. So you don't say pata anti, just patanti. So, having done that rather dry, not terribly exciting bit, and I hope it doesn't put you off, because now we are getting to some real actual words. Near the bottom of page 26, this verb the root to fall. That is in Roman script, pat. See, boom, boom, ba. I haven't written that terribly cleverly. This is a bit better. Now, the way I've written it is pata. If you want to make it just pat, but to block off that last a, you'd have to write what's called the virama. Sorry, my pen's going funny. I have to write the virama under it like that. See, virama means a stopping or a pausing. It means it stops or pauses that ah. So instead of pata, it becomes pat. So that little sign there blocks the final ah. Now, pat. Look at the third person singular. I will write out in Roman script along this line. Third person singular is pat plus a plus t. So that's the root pat plus the thematic sign a t makes patati, means he, she, or it falls. Patati. And in the third plural, remember we said a moment ago, you don't have pat plus a plus anti. If the ending begins with an a, that middle a just drops out there. So we have they fall in the plural, not the dual, remember. If two people are falling, you can't say patanti, you have to say patata. So they are falling, they fall in the plural, patanti. So we had first person, third singular patati, third plural patanti. The first person singular I fall is patami. It's pat plus a plus me. But remember now that because it's first person in a thematic verb, this a is always lengthened. So it's not patami, but patami. And similarly, we two, I mean, the two of us fall is patava. And we are falling as we, three or more people, patama. So at the bottom line now, bottom line that is on page 26, he, she, or it falls is patati. They two fall, the two of them fall, is patata. Patata. And they fall, that's three or more people in the plural, patanti. And for those who know French and Latin, you'll see that this nt as the third person plural ending that you have in Latin and French, well, it's the historically, etymologically the same as this nti ending in Sanskrit and Vedic. Now going to the top of page 27, you fall, you singular fall, patasi. You both fall, the two of you fall, patatah, patatah. And you all fall, three or more of you fall, is the same as the dual, but without the visarga at the end, without the ha sound at the end. So, ba, da, ta. And the first person, I fall, patami. The two of us fall, patava. And we fall in the plural, patama. Notice in the first person, I and we, it's this long a is characteristic there. So patasi, patata, patata, all but the short a. But in the first person, patami, patava, patama. And those of you who know Latin will recognize, of course, that this is from the same origin as the Latin we ending mus, and which, of course, as you know, in French, the ending ns for the we. I'll go back to the text. For some verbal roots as seen above, the root and the base are the same. However, some verbal roots change when they are conjugated according to the rules of internal santi, which you need not be concerned about at this point. When you learn a new verb, it is important to remember both the root and the third person singular conjugation, which indicates the verbal base and stem form. Now, we're going to look at the very, very common verb bhu, to be or to become. So the root is bhu. The present stem, present base, actually becomes bhav. There's a reason for it that we won't bother you with now, otherwise we'll overload this lesson. So bhav. So it's to this stem bhav that we add the endings that we've just seen with pat, patati, patasi, patami, and so on. So I am, I am is bhavami. Actually, let's follow the order given here. Third person singular, he, she, or it is bhavati. Bhavati. In the dual, they are, speaking about where the subject is two of them, is bhavata. And the plural is bhavanti. In the second person, you singular are bhavasi. You dual are bhavata. And you plural, you are bhavata. Now for the third person, I am bhavami, bhavami. We two are, the two of us, bhavava. And we plural, three or more, bhavama. Now we get to the section in the last third of page 27 called conjugate. When you're conjugating or doing any Sanskrit exercise, it is important that you recite the words aloud as well as write out the paradigm. Note the starred verbs below, which have a verbal base that differs from the root. So let's go through this list of verbs here. And the third person singular form is given. Once you know the third person singular form, once you've got the root and then your conjugational base like bhu, bhavati, that's the form that we normally quote for a verb. Once you know that it's bhavati, then from bhavati you can form all of the other present indicatives. So bhavati, then the rest follows. Bhavata, bhavanti, bhavasi, bhavata, and so on. So just get the root and the third singular, and then you've got it. So for example, to eat, I write them out in Roman script again. They're in the Devanagari, of course, in our textbook. That is kad. This is a root that does not change to make its present base. So he, she, it eats is just kadati. Kadati. From the root gum, root sign here, very well known root gum. This is irregular. You would expect something like gammati, but it's not. It's irregular, and the M changes to a ch. So he, she, it goes, in fact, is gachati. Gachati. Note here, by the way, that this the aspirated ch is always doubled if it's preceded by a short vowel. So it is preceded by a short vowel here, so it's doubled to a double, so ch. And incidentally, when you double an aspirated consonant, that's a consonant with a h sound after it, like ch, you only double the first element of it. So, for example, in the, you double that in the Buddha, for example. So you just double the first element of it, Buddha. And it's written the same in the Devanagari script as well. So it will be written as a the plus a the plus the. Right, so I'll just rub this out now, and we'll get on with our conjugation of these verbs. Oops. The third one in assist is agam. Oops, sorry. Why am I splitting this up? By convention, when we write a root, we put the root sign. Verbs are often used with prefixes like agam, avagam, apagam, adhigam. Just as in English we can do go up, go down, go in, go out, go on. That changes the meaning of the basic meaning of go. We can alter the meaning sometimes considerably, sometimes not, only a little bit, by adding these up, down, in, out, speak up, speak out, come in, come down, come off it. So, but in Sanskrit and Pali, this is done by prefixes rather than suffixes, but it's precisely the same idea for both languages. And when we are writing out a verb with root plus prefix, by convention, we put the prefix, this a here, followed by the root sign, followed by gum. It's just a linguistic convention. So agam, gum means to go, agam means to come. In fact, it's cognate. Gum is cognate with our English word come. So just as gachati is go, so agachati means to come. He comes. Agachati. So I'm coming. Agachami. Ji, to conquer. This conjugates with the base J. Again, there's a good reason for it, which we'll come to in due course. So J, so he conquers, is Jayati. Tyaj, to abandon. That doesn't change for its present base, so you have tyajati. Incidentally, that's a well-known word for the Buddhists, because in Sanskrit the verbal noun is tyaga. Just for example, you get from yuj, which we had a few moments ago. Yuj, yoga, the j to g and the ch to k change. Yuj, yoga, tyaj, tyaga. In Pali, that becomes the tya becomes the ch. So in Pali, it becomes chaga. That means abandoning, leaving, but it's used in the sense of renunciation, leaving things. Tyaga, Sanskrit, chaga, Pali. Now the next one, the root, this verb to see, and the Devanagari is drish. This is quite an unusual verb. Now, normally we would expect a verb like this, drish, to see. We'd expect something like drishati, he sees, but that doesn't exist. We use an entirely different word. So he sees, entirely different base is pashyati. Don't worry, this happens not often at all. Very, very few verbs do that. We have a similar phenomenon in European languages as well, where you get another verb doing duty for a certain part that doesn't exist. For example, in our verb to go, we have go, and we have it slightly irregular, but from the same root, gone. But in the past tense, we don't say I goed, we have to say went. So we use an entirely different base, an entirely different word, different verb to make the past tense. Those of you who are familiar with French, for example, to go, aller, to go. But I go is je vais, and il va, and so on. And in Italian, to go, andare. You don't say ando, you say vado. So there are several verbs in our modern European languages, as well as Sanskrit, where you have actually two separate bases to form the conjugation of the verb. But don't worry, it doesn't happen much, and they're all quite common verbs, so you'll learn them pretty quickly as you go along. Now the next one on this list is nam. That's one to bow. Nam. And we know this one as in namaste. As a verbal noun, a bowing is namah or namas, and bow to you, honor or respect to you, namaste. The root actually means to bend, because as you're bowing, you are bending the body. It's this primitive way of non-aggression. You're making yourself smaller before somebody else. It's a sign of respect originally, and very primitively non-aggression. So you bow. Again, this root does not change for the present tense. So namati, he bows. Namati. Pat. Next one is pat. That is retroflex and aspirated. Pat, to read or to study. Patati. Patati. Now, over the page, nearly at the end of this section, top of page 29, the root bud. Bud means to be, basically to be awake, or to know. It also means to know. And we have the Buddha, of course. It's a very ordinary word of Sanskrit and Pali. I'll explain for a moment how we get Buddha. But here, the base, you strengthen, so the guna, the strengthening of the Buddha bo. So he knows, or he wakes up, the u changes to o, and we'll deal in detail as we go along with why that happens. It's a fairly common phenomenon. So bodhati. By the way, the past participle the awakened, awake, is actually a bud plus the past participle ending ta, and by sandhi, that's the way that the sounds coalesce and merge and alter each other, buddha becomes Buddha, and that's how we get Buddha from the root bud. And finally, no, not finally, second last on our root, vad, to speak. That doesn't change for the present tense. So he speaks, or he says, is vadati. Note that the verbal noun from vad is vada. That you often find that happening. You get a root in a short a, lengthens that a to a for the verbal noun to vada. So vada means a saying. And then by extension, what you say, what you teach people. So Theravada is the teaching of the elders. The word Thera means an elder. Theravada, the elders saying, therefore the teaching of the elders. And finally, in this list here, sad, meaning to sit, also has the meaning of to sink down. Sad actually is cognate, of course, with our English word sit, and the Latin sedere, and so on. Notice that this root then changes to, it has a different present base, that sad becomes seed, but it's the same verb. So he sits is seedati. I said seedati. And you've got a little panel at the top of page 29 talking about the root nam, origin of the word namaste, I bow to you, or salutations to you. Right, there we are. We've reached the end of this section. Thank you for watching.